Let me do an intro first, then we'll talk here. This is Mark Lydecker. Mark is the executive and outreach pastor of Living Faith Christian Church in Farmingdale on Long Island. And Mark, it's great to connect with you. Mark is also one of our new board members for the Venture Church Network Northeast, and really delighted to be talking to him because of the story he has to tell us, and I wanted you to hear about it. So, Mark, you texted me about 2 weeks ago and said you had like 60 people signed up for baptism. So, tell me the story behind that, and tell me the story of what's happening now.
Well, we have on Long Island, we have a strongly Catholic Italian community. 600,000, 650,000 people are Catholic background. So you haven't got a lot of baptized people by immersion, that's for sure. And then we keep getting, for years and years, we just get tons of visitors every week in our church. We get people who stick around, people who get saved. And we've just been seeing since the first of the year, we're going through a pastoral transition at the time.
Yeah.
So our pastor was just traveling back and forth from a distance until we found a new pastor. And our attendance jumped by 200 the second week of January. And we thought, what's going on? And then it continued to do that. But of course, like every church, we're going through the churn. Guy comes this week, he comes the fourth week, he comes the second week. We found that on Long Island, people love to get off the island when they can. So get away from all the traffic, the commutes, the everything. So we've had a lot of things going on, and we could see it, but we couldn't understand it completely because the numbers just don't tell you where you're really at, except when it came to Easter. All of a sudden, our online presence, which we have a strong online presence every week, suddenly soared, but so did our internal or in-person attendance. So we went to like 2,800 between the two
Wow.
here at the church on the Easter Sunday. But we knew we were seeing something, a little bit of a comeback, because COVID hit us so hard. With 22 deaths related to our church. We had 240 people move south to South Carolina, North Carolina, and so forth in 2021 alone. And we lost track of the numbers, how many actually were moving away. It was just very, very difficult time for us. We praise God. We weren't seeing it financially, any kind of collapse like that. We stayed above in the black all the time. So things were going well, but we had no idea. And then this year, what took place was our pastor finished up in June. We had a new pastor coming, and he said, would you preach on July 2nd? Well, the staff was sitting around the prior month, and we were jabbing about in a breakfast meeting. We were jabbing about a baptism. And I said, well, why don't we just do a big beach baptism? Because I think we've got about 20 built up right now who we haven't been able to get to baptize them. So we said, okay. And we thought about it, thought maybe we'll have 30 people, maybe even 40 to baptize. Well, I preached on baptism on July 2nd. The response was so strong. At the end of the day, I think we had 55 people ready to be baptized. The next week we had 67. And then all of a sudden, as of today, it's 115 people to baptize in the ocean on August 6th. And we still have 12 days to go. So we're pretty excited about what the Lord's opening up and doing.
That's amazing. So the thing that really impressed me was these aren't just people that have been saved a long time. You've had over 40 people who've expressed their faith in Jesus this year. Is there a common story or thread in those people who've committed to Christ, or what's going on there?
My wife and I were discussing that this morning before I came in, and she and I both agreed to advance the gospel in a church, to see the gospel move forward in a church. One thing's for sure, God has elect people out there. And the more times I preach the gospel, though, the more elect I happen to see. And the less times I preach the gospel, the fewer elect people I see. Is there a connection on those dots? Well, so we were talking about this morning, and I said, you know something? One of the things that Living Faith does is we prioritize the gospel.
Mm.
Everything is about reaching lost people,
Yeah.
seeing them walk with the Lord, seeing them come in and join a small group, participate in the body of Christ, be active in things. We've got a long way to go because we have so many new believers. As of Sunday, I think we led our 51st or 45th adult to Christ, and we had 6 already teenagers have come to Christ. VBS 2 weeks ago, 17 children came to Christ. And what we do for children is we immediately take their name and address and everything about them. Then we give them a unique Bible, and then we meet with their parents immediately and tell them they've received Christ as Savior, and go over some things that they might want to do. And then I'm going to be sending them a letter this week, instructing them some steps they can take in their home to help their child walk with it. I realize not every church sees this kind of thing happening.
Yeah.
But we get on our knees. I get on my knees every Saturday night. I say, God, would you give me a soul tomorrow? Just open up a heart. Yesterday on Sunday morning, we went through the 2 services. At the end, they were turning off the lights. I'm walking to the back, and a guy walks up to me and says, I want to be baptized, Pastor. And I said, haven't you been here a long time? And he says, yeah, quite a while. And we talked for a minute. And then I said, when did you get saved? And he looked at me and he says, I never have. I said, I quizzed him 3 different ways. And he says, no, I've never received Christ. And I thought, something, sometimes we presume up on the situation that people are already saved. People have heard the gospel. I think so often we just have to realize God has called us. It's a mandate. Let's get the gospel out there. Let's share with people about Christ. I have a card sitting on my desk. I found it the other day. It popped out of an old book, and it's a guy named Alex, the Titan Fire Company guy. I happen to be opening the building up. We have 2 different buildings, one an office and then the whole sanctuary fellowship hall. I opened it up for him and let him inspect our fire. We have a sprinkler system. He had to do that every 6 months. And, the card says, led him to Christ at the lobby desk as we were filling out the inspection form. And he lives about an hour from here, so we don't see him. But the point is that I think if you're on your game and you say, Lord, would you use me? Would you? And every time I pray, so instead of leading one guy to Christ at the end, when I was walking out the door Sunday, in the meantime, they were leading another guy to Christ out at the front desk, in the information desk. And I'm thinking, I got a twofer. I ask God for 1, he gives me 2. And I just see that happen all the time. That's why we're seeing it. I think we're seeing it because we have, our whole staff gets excited. We have a board every Monday morning. We write on that board. We up the numbers who have gotten saved on a whiteboard. We want to be held accountable for the gospel and the conveying of it. We also want to celebrate what God is doing. I don't think enough of us celebrate when we do have things happen.
I'm really hearing the intentionality in regards to evangelism, sharing your faith, preaching the gospel, watching, keeping track of people who've come to faith, and looking for opportunities and open doors. As a pastor, how do you infuse that evangelistic passion into your church? As I talk with pastors, some of them have lost the passion, but many of them are desiring to see the gospel furthered in their communities and their congregation, engaging with it, and are kind of struggling with passing that baton. Any thoughts on that?
Well, Lynn and I were talking about that as well.
That's a whole seminar, right?
Yeah, it is. But that is the seminar that need to be said, is that it all starts with the pastor, doesn't it? And when he catches fire, when he gets renewed and understand that it's his sheep will follow the shepherd, but it's not going to be the other way around. And it's rare when you get someone in your church who just gets all fired up about being used of God to lead somebody to Christ, and his pastor is more concerned about changing out the carpets next month and the budget. There's a zillion things that bog you down. I'm the executive pastor. I cover every single area of this $3 million budget. The auditors make me sign monthly every single page of the financial statements. There must be 20 of them. And I have to go through, identify all of the details on the finances. And I've got a finance manager. why can't he do it? No, because my auditors make me go through and do it. And
Yeah.
then I've got other ministries in the church, and we have other responsibilities. But the one thing I never let go of, and that's my responsibility to infuse in others, to get them to understand the importance of the gospel, because there's nothing that will make a better disciple than to lead somebody to Christ. When I do that, I know I've engaged in such a way, it taught me new things. Now, I had a woman who was who called me up. She says, I'm gay and I have 6 children. How do I fit at Living Faith? Can I fit at Living Faith? At the end of the conversation, we're crying together. We're hoping with one another. That's the kind of thing. And it was reframing for me my passion and concern for people, because I was sharing with her the importance of Christ and how he can transform her life and will transform her life as she looks, and she'll struggle the rest of her days, no doubt. But I will help her in that. So I think that as we look at people, as we remember our responsibility, as we take it on, let's not forfeit the blessings of God in watching people come to Christ while we're concerned about the other mundane but important things in ministry. Somehow we have to bridge the gap in tying it all together like that.
Well, even in this last example you've given, we get so caught up with the social sins of our culture and our world,
Right.
that sometimes we move away from the gospel into other areas, and we got to get back to the main thing. And that's why, as a network, we've said number one value is that we want to be gospel driven. We want to be faithful to the scriptures. We want to be making disciples. And man, I appreciate what you guys are doing. I appreciate you, Mark, and the impact you were having in a tough community. And
it is.
Yeah, Long Island's not the easiest place to do evangelism, but the gospel works there too.
I remember moving here 10, almost 11 years ago, watching a fight in line at a Lowe's store. And I'm going, well, they're fighting because one got in front of the other one. And then a lady, I moved her cart a little bit in a grocery store, about 1 inch, so I could get around her. And she jumped all over me. And I thought, what are these people like here? And then, you watch their traffic, the way they drive and weave and go crazy in traffic. It's because they are crazy a little bit. It has nothing to do with how bad drivers they are. And you're in a parking lot all the time. I call myself Gilligan because I'm stuck on the island so often. It takes 2 hours to drive 28 miles. And you just go to yourself, it's not worth it. I'll just stay home now in my own backyard. But that that means also that people need the Lord, probably, and are more aware of their tremendous shortfalls and deep-seated needs than any place else I've been to in America. I find the conversations just break open everywhere I go. As soon as I say, yeah, I'm the executive pastor at Living Faith, the church, and they don't even know we exist. And that's disturbing. And I walk into a restaurant and I look up at the waitress and I look around the room and I'm going, this place is packed and I got a big church and I don't know anyone in this restaurant. That's disturbing. And so I constantly refocus on the volume of the lost people, but also know the brokenness that they have. Maybe just that guy standing there wants to connect and know and hear the story of how Christ could change his life. That's how I look at it. And that's the change. And our people are that way. And my chair elder came in one day. He was waiting for the senior pastor. He plopped down in a chair. You know how they do that if you leave your door open. Yeah. And so I did. And he came wandering down the hall. He plopped down. And he says, well, Mark, he says, I just want you to know, this was about a year or two after I'd been here. He says, we were a pretty evangelistic church before you came. He says, and then he looked at me, he says, but now we're all about evangelism. And so you can effectively create a culture by, your own exuberance, your own understanding of the gospel, your own dynamic joy that comes out of it. And when you do, it's a different game. And it took a long time for me to get there through the years, no doubt. That you don't start off that way. I was one of those guys in a very conservative church. My first pastorate, it was all about doctrine. And yet we were about reaching people too. I will say it was a pretty good church for that. But you can get swamped with everything else, and you just need to be swamped with the gospel in your own life. You need to be crying for lost people, engaging. My wife and I go out and meet our neighbors constantly. We give them gifts. During COVID, we brought them gifts and put it on their doorstep for like 5 months. And one of the neighbors came over because I said, there's one guy I'll never reach, because I use blesseveryhome.com. You know how you can pray for your neighbors every day. And I said, that one neighbor's never going to come to Christ because he's mad at me over a fence issue years ago where a tree blew over. And you know, he walked over and he says, Mark, he said, here you're going through some difficulty. I got some health issues. And I started talking to him. And before long, he says, well, that's the kind of thing. I want to go to your baptism, he said. And he said this to me, you know, you and your wife kind of own the neighborhood. And I thought, what are we talking about? He was relating back to during COVID when we gave gifts to 14 neighbors who just walked around putting gifts on their door with notes telling them we love them and it's a tough time. One of the gifts was a bag of Doritos in the summer. I said, what goes better in the backyard than having a bag of Doritos? That bag of Doritos mattered. They knew I cared for them. So yeah, that's the kind of thing. That's when it becomes infectious, I think.
Yeah, I love it, Mark. Well, I'm praying you have 120 or more. And
we think we're going to have 20 walk forward out of the crowd. I was there the other night. They had 300 on the beach at 5:30, and I'm just going, oh, nuts. It's a little tight now because I'm going to pull 300 in here too. You know, and I don't want to take over a beach experience for a family. It's a beautiful sunset. You're overlooking into Manhattan from that beach. And the sun sets perfectly over Manhattan from that beach. I hope I don't destroy anybody's afternoon, but I think we'll bring something fun to them on the beach, and I hope they'll enjoy it.
Well, I'm praying not only that you have more, but I'm praying that our VCN churches will
me too
have that passion as well. So thanks for sharing that.
Thank you so much.
I really appreciate it.
Glad to be there.